This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by
There was once a time in Western civilization, a long time, where you could not safely speak out against its governments. Today, most Westerners look at that as though it were barbaric.
During the war for American independence,
they rejoice in the alleged freedom we now have, the limited but real right to oppose government misdeeds with our speech and our writing. But if we have a recognized right to actively oppose abuses with speech, why are we forced to actively support abuses with our labor? The Washington government has been using your tax dollars to torture terror and guerrilla suspects. According to a 2004 poll, 63% of Americans believe it's always wrong to torture terror suspects. That number would be higher if the question had properly accounted for guerrilla war suspects. Anyway, if most of us are in agreement that it's wrong to torture, can we not agree that it's wrong to underwrite torture? Was Bush all that wrong when he said funding evil is the same as perpetrating evil? Is it possible that the average American has a duty to withhold funding, not only from foreign terrorists, but from the U.S. torture state as well? It was once unthinkable that a government would officially allow opposing speech. Yet, it became routine, expected. Now, it's unthinkable that a government would officially allow the withdrawal of financial support. Could that too become routine and expected? People say a government could not possibly fund itself if people were not forced to fork over. But in saying that, aren't they making our point for us? Aren't they admitting that the government is failing to give people what they're paying for?
I'm just saying we're going to march on D.C. and put Ron Paul in the White House. But, yeah!
The right to withhold support is far more important than the right to jawbone. An American who openly opposes Afghan guerrillas with his voice, but openly underwrites them with his dollars, would go to jail. But an American who openly opposes torture with his voice, while openly underwriting with his tax dollars, well, that's exactly what Americans are ordered to do. You can go to jail for not doing it. Bear in mind, also, this is not just a Bush thing, that Reuters is reporting that abuse of Guantanamo detainees, at least, got worse after Obama was elected. The Obama administration also threatened the British government over its plan to release information about torture. So this issue is far from dead. Speaking of torture, a little history, even in North Vietnam, U.S. prisoners received better care when the governments changed. For instance, when Ho Chi Minh died, that resulted in an almost instant improving in their living conditions, in many cases. But no such luck for the many Gitmo prisoners who may or may not be guilty of terrorism. Anyway, just a thought, maybe a hopeful one. If there was a day when civilization progressed toward speech freedom, maybe there will be a day when it progresses toward financial freedom. It seems to be happening in China to some extent, where they have eliminated the income tax for most people. There, maybe it's starting to become the opposite of here. There you lack free speech, but possess increasing freedom of choice in funding the government. Here you have the freedom of speech, but not the freedom of choice. Maybe someday, after a collapse of the central government in America, New Hampshireites will have only a government that lets people withhold financial support. Maybe it will not use force on them when they withhold such support. Maybe there would be a way for authorities to withhold services in response. Maybe they could charge for services on a pay-as-you-use basis. It would be better than actively seizing property simply because people have it and didn't pay a tax. Better yet, maybe it should operate more like a combination of United Way and Southwest Airlines, voluntarily collecting its assets by providing a service more effectively than others. Ultimately, the right to give nothing is more important than the right to say something.